Welcome back. In this lecture, we'll be looking at persuasive strategies used in digital activism. How are these strategies used to influence and call people to action? As mentioned in our previous lecture, in the 21st century, movements like Me Too and Black Lives Matter have achieved in months what earlier movements struggled to accomplish in decades. Their success is tied directly to digital platforms that spread persuasive messages quickly and broadly. But these movements also face criticism, often mischaracterized as oversensitive. Like the chapter, this presentation seeks to reposition their digital practices as legitimate and essential acts of persuasion in a resistant world. What exactly is persuasion? Persuasion in communication is more than marketing or debate. It's how messages shape beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors. Scholars generally explore persuasion using rhetoric, which reveals ethical dilemmas, and communication science, which measures impact. Together, they give us a holistic understanding of digital activism. We've spoken about the idea of social movements in previous lectures, but let's pause to unpack the idea further. Social movements are organized efforts to create change, whether through a viral hashtag, a protest, or a carousel post on Instagram. Yes, as simple as that. These efforts use persuasion to reframe narratives, influence policy, and build awareness. As you begin to think about the causes that you care about, one key thing to remember is that understanding digital activism demands more than just one lens. A rhetorical approach helps us see how movements craft their messages, the metaphors they choose, the emotions they evoke, and how they frame the struggle. Meanwhile, a social scientific approach helps us test which messages actually move audiences, change their attitudes, or inspire action. This intersubdisciplinary method gives us both the how and the why of activism. It's like using both a microscope and a telescope. One zooms in to understand meaning making, while the other zooms out to track influence and pattern. For digital activists, this dual approach offers deeper insights into what works, what doesn't, and how to craft messages that can survive and thrive in complex digital ecosystems. One of the major obstacles that digital activists face is demagoguery, a form of communication that thrives on division, fear, and emotional manipulation. Demagogic rhetoric oversimplifies complex social issues into binary oppositions, us versus them, and good versus evil. It encourages scapegoating and silences deliberation. In this kind of environment, public discourse becomes more about assigning blame than seeking a solution. And social media can certainly amplify this with algorithms that reward outrage and polarization. Activists often find themselves fighting not just for attention, but for the very possibility of dialogue. So, understanding demagoguery allows activists to see how persuasive tools can be misused and why simply presenting facts isn't always enough. Instead, activists must actively work to disrupt these toxic narratives by modeling inclusive, thoughtful, and evidence based communication, often in environments designed to do the opposite. It's important to understand that even the best arguments can be drowned in an ocean of misinformation. When platforms reward sensationalism, the most networked, not the most truthful message wins. This environment threatens the goal of social movements. Consequently, activists have embraced bots to shift discourse. For example, the Pay Gap app exposing gender inequality to bots that confront hate speech. These tools change environments, not just messages. Generally speaking, activism must go beyond compelling arguments to constructing the right digital environment for those arguments to be heard. Think of it as gardening. You can't grow persuasion in toxic soil. And bear in mind that bias isn't always visible. It's baked into systems, from education to law enforcement. Implicit bias is a symptom of deeper structural frameworks that activists must confront. So, when we talk about bias in the digital age, we can't ignore the invisible hand of algorithms. Now, algorithmic bias refers to how digital systems, especially those built into social media platforms, search engines, and AI, mirror and magnify the prejudices of human creators. These biases aren't just technical glitches, they're embedded in the design choices, the data sets, and the goals of the systems themselves. For example, algorithms may amplify content that's emotionally charged or polarizing because it keeps users engaged longer. That might mean that misinformation, stereotypes, or extremist content gets prioritized over factual, nuanced information. And because these algorithms are proprietary and opaque, users often don't realize how their information environment is being curated or manipulated. Therefore, activists need to understand that digital platforms don't just host activism, they shape its reach and effectiveness. One of the most innovative responses to algorithmic bias in recent years has come from activists on Instagram, specifically through the use of slideshow or carousel posts. These activists recognized that Instagram's algorithm favors aesthetically pleasing, highly engaging content like serene nature shots, bright colors, and influencer style photography. So instead of fighting against the algorithm, they hacked it by embedding political and educational messages with visually appealing slideshows, often using soft colors, floral imagery, and minimalist design. Activists tricked the algorithm into prioritizing critical content. This isn't just clever, to be clear, it's strategic. These slideshows often combine clear, accessible language with personal stories and actionable steps, making the content not only easy to understand, but easy to share. They blur the line between personal expression and political intervention, helping users see their individual actions, liking, saving, sharing, as part of the larger movement. Importantly, this approach doesn't just educate, it shifts the narrative environment itself. By operating within the platform's logic while resisting its biases, Instagram slideshows show how digital activism can be both critical and creative at the same time. They help frame the way we consume information and how we engage with issues that really matter. As a digital activist, it's important to remember that the goal isn't just to unlearn bias, it's to dismantle the systems that enable it. Digital activism must connect individual action to institutional change. And as for stigma, this isn't about one bad label. It's a network of beliefs that dehumanize and isolate. Therefore, social movements work and must continue to work to rewrite these narratives and restore dignity. Now, storytelling plays a major role in digital activism. Stories are powerful tools. They humanize stigmatized groups, normalize diversity, and help fight misinformation with lived truth. When people see themselves reflected, they begin to care. Now, as an example, movements like body positivity thrive on visual platforms. Activists post real bodies with real stories to normalize and celebrate diversity, therefore challenging stigma at its core. To dismantle stigma, we must pair stories with structure. Personal narratives must also call attention to systemic obstacles. The point is, we're whole people, not problems to fix. And this approach is critical to environmental activism. Fundamentally speaking, environmental activism isn't separate from these challenges, it embodies them. Misinformation distorts climate science. Bias minimizes indigenous and frontline voices. And stigma targets environmentalists as extremists. Digital tools can help activists shape narratives that are truthful, inclusive, and persuasive. Whether using bots to counter denialism or carousel posts that highlight environmental racism, digital environmental activists must apply these lessons to create lasting change.